Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the last of sort of the catch-up videos. Getting ready to work on the horizontal stabilizer installation, and it's uh, it's kind of fun putting all this stuff together you've been building the last couple of years. Um, as everything else, it's like you put it on, you test fit it a little bit and see how things go, and it might go on two or three different times, and before you actually make sure that it's set in place correctly for the final time. It's really hard to figure out exactly like, oh, okay, this is the final time that I'm doing it, because just about the time you think, oh, I've got it all together, I'm not going to have any problems, and I can go forward from here. You go to put the next piece on and be like, oh, there's that one part that I needed to do beforehand. Uh, so it's a little bit of trial and error. Um, but this goes on and off pretty easily. I think the real trick is even if you once you get it all put into place, just double check everything. And I've got the manual sitting there on the horizontal stabilizer just to make sure that I'm doing everything that I need to be doing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm missing something. So, getting ready to go put the elevator on, and the one thing that I did incorrectly, part of my process is I got to do everything twice just to be sure. I managed to put the counterweight on the opposite direction that it needed to be. It's not a horrible deal to switch that around, but it's definitely a lot easier to put it together during the initial phases. The bolts are a little bit easier to get access to, and but it definitely there's only one way that it goes on, and if you put it on incorrectly, then you definitely have to flip it around. And you'll see me kind of flopping this back and forth a little bit. What happens is there was a couple of loose mandrel pieces that were inside the elevator itself, and I needed to make sure that I got them all shaken out. There are some access points that you can get stuff through, so it's just a matter of rattling it in the right way so that that part rolls out. Because the last thing you want to do is have that extra piece rolling around in there once you're done with the build. So once this is done, now that I've got the counterweight on correctly, I can start working on getting the bolts fed through the part. Oh, and this is where I'm trying to get the bolts shaken out of it. I just thought it looked kind of funny with me. I'm not dancing with it, but some shakes back and forth and stuff starts rolling out after a while. Um, anyway, but getting it bolted back on. Let's see what else is going on in here. Um, this isn't something that I don't know. I mean, it's the first time I'm building an airplane, so I'm figuring out what I'm doing wrong. I can tell you that I got this all the way put on. Everything was quite a ways along, and then I discovered that I ran the wire for the trim tab motor out the wrong port or hole on the horizontal stabilizer. So I had to back everything out because there was no way to get the wire fed back through and then back into the elevator itself. It just wasn't going to work well that way because I was afraid it was going to pinch the wire too much. It probably would have worked, but I mean, this is the time to do that process right now rather than skipping over something that needs to go in place. Um, doing this, it's possible to do this on your own. It's not a huge deal. You just basically got to get the first bolt started. I found that starting in the center and then working my way out was the easiest way to do it. And then it's a little bit of a tricky. I had some long needle nose pliers, and that was there to hold the nut in place, or the nut in place so that the parts would flow into that. But it's like a nut, a washer, uh, a spacer washer, another, and then on the other side of the pivot point or the bearing, another washer, and then a washer on the outside. So there's like four washers per bolt that go through. But once that's done, then you get to start making it look like more like an airplane. The vertical stabilizer going in place there. And I've got some extra wires there from the USB port that I have on the back, as well as the VOR antenna that's going onto it. Um, oh, and the beacon light as well. So there's the three wires that are coming off of that. Um, just lots of dry fitting, checking to make sure that everything fits into place. The one thing that I knew that I needed to do way back on when I first started this build, I had told myself, or part of my building plan was that I was going to use an epoxy on each of the riv nuts so that they didn't spin, even though they're mechanically bound into place. I didn't want them to spin in place, and so unfortunately, I forgot at that stage of things. Plus, I really wasn't sure how to use a riv nut puller, so I was doing it wrong and basically pulling through the rivet or the riv nut and effectively stripping it out. So, and I'd only did it on the vertical stabilizer. I knew that I was going to have to address this at some point in time before I put it on. And this is the time that I finally got around to doing that. It wasn't horrible. There was just a couple of channels that had to be removed, and once those channels came back off, that cleared the space. I was able to get I did a bad job on the epoxy. It was a marine epoxy instead of a kind of a harder epoxy, and so I removed all that, cleaned it up a bunch, redid the riv nuts correctly this time because by this stage of the game, if you're not good at riv nuts, you probably won't ever be, because there have been probably a few hundred of them pulled at this point in time. So anyway, so I took that time to go ahead and address that with the vertical stabilizer, and that's now correct. So because my big fear was, and I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have worked, that when I went to go put the screws in to hold the vertical stabilizer in place, the riv nuts would have just been stripped out and they wouldn't have gone in anyway. So it was just easier just to go ahead and take it apart and rebuild it at that point in time. So fun parts about building. So this is just me going back through and working on getting the elevator put back in again. I think I had it on like 4 or 5 times. By the third time, I think I was getting pretty decent at it. And then there was there's quite a few wires here in the back section of this. More than I thought I would have, but it's about managing where the connectors are at so they don't interrupt any sort of flow with the elevator movement at all. So you just got to make sure that everything's nice and tidy in that area. So I spent a fair amount of time just getting things right. Fortunately, the vertical stabilizer is super light, so it's not a big deal to put in there. And again, I had that on and off quite a bit. But and the great part is the connectors are all just sort of clicked together, and then they're all good to go. So let's see what else. Yeah, just making sure that all the connectors in, and then the routing. I did use some of the empty space in the horizontal the horizontal stabilizer. The one thing that you also want to do is before you put the vertical stabilizer on, there's no way from the side bolts to be able to actually access the elevator rod connection there. You can see how far off that is. You can't get the bolts in from the side there. So if you have the vertical stabilizer on, there's no way to do that. So vertical stabilizer's got to be off so that you can get the proper alignment to get the eye bolt and the bolt holding that together for the elevator on correctly. So another reason for the vertical stabilizer to come off, make sure you attach that control rod for the elevator in before you put the vertical stabilizer on. The one interesting side effect about the hanger is when I turn the heat on in the wintertime, and if there's snow on the roof, it warms up inside, and the condensation on the ceiling actually can make it rain in the hanger. So I've got a lot of blankets covering most of the plane, just simply to protect it a little bit from the rain in the hanger. I'll address that at a later time. Anyway, Aaron came out, and he actually was able to spend an afternoon helping, and he did all the rivet holes for the cover there for the rear portion of the aircraft. So I really appreciate his help on that. But it's starting to look a little bit like an airplane there. I borrowed the rivet clamp, or I forget what it's called, but I borrowed this tool from my technical counselor, and just went down the line and squeezed all of the pop rivets because those were still part of the build. The solid rivets are somewhat recommended from some of the builders now, but I wanted to make sure I squeezed all those down to make sure that there was clear access for the flaps and ailerons in the movement there. So I just took the time to go down that list. And then started working on getting the flaps and ailerons put in. You know, these go on pretty straightforward. After you've done the elevator on the back of the plane 5 or 6 times, did I say 3 or 4? Maybe 5 or 6. This goes on pretty quickly. It's pretty easy to do. The material's light, and it's just a couple of bolts for the elevator or for the aileron, and then 3 for the flaps. The one thing I would recommend is when you put the control rods on, don't screw them on all the way from each end. Only screw them on about halfway before you really start tightening everything down. Because if you put them on all the way, then there's only one direction you can work with. If you only put them on halfway, then you've got some play that you can work with either in or out. I think I made the mistake of screwing them on all the way, and this is in particular the flaps. So I really only had one direction that I could tighten it or loosen it at that point in time. On one of the forums somewhere, somebody came up with this plan, which I thought was a great plan. So I went ahead and did it to put these nut plates on the backer plate for the lights on the wing tips. And it's a little bit extra work, but what it does is it creates a threaded screw mount for the backer plate, and it just makes it easier to take on and off once you have it lined up. It's a little bit challenging to actually get it started, but once you get it going, I think the durability of it is going to last a lot longer rather than the short little threaded screws. I got the prop on. That was interesting, and took a little bit of time. All learning experiences as part of this process. The hangar's kind of a mess most days, and I'm sometimes working in the snow. So anyway, next video will be a catch-up video on where everything's at, and hopefully we'll see some airtime here soon. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you soon.